I now recognize the member for Caribou North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Minister. Over the last few weeks, I spent time out in rural, remote wilderness parts of the Caribou riding, meeting with constituents, meeting with stakeholders as we prepare for this upcoming season, which by all prediction is going to be a challenging one. In our rural communities, our volunteer fire departments play a critical role in the safety of our communities, specifically the more rural, remote wilderness access you go. And so through you to Mr. Chair, to the Minister, I have two questions on that. The first is there are two sets of volunteer fire departments that we have in the Caribou. We have those that are connected through the Caribou Regional District, and then we have departments that are called unincorporated volunteer fire departments, which sometimes are called fire brigades. Two critical issues as we prepare for this upcoming season is first, access to water, which is a critical issue, and the second piece is access to roads. So on the first one, when I met with the Miocene Volunteer Fire Department, they actually exist right on Dewar Lake and yet cannot get any access to water on Dewar Lake. And so they've requested for me to bring through to you, to the Minister, to say we have to have a broader approach, and whether that's through the access management strategy teams that are happening on the ground right now, to connect both the volunteer fire departments to access to water in order to address any of the challenges that they have. So the first one was Dewar Lake and the Miocene Volunteer Fire Department. The second one is Wildwood, sorry, I've got Wildland and Wild. So Wildwood Volunteer Fire Department needs access to Minton Lake in order to access water. And I probably could say that most of our volunteer fire departments are looking at that right now. But maybe we'll stick with the Miocene Volunteer Fire Department and access to Dewar Lake, and then I'll ask the later question because it's about access.
Minister.
Thank you so much. And I want to start by thanking the member from Caribou for the work that she is doing in meeting with her constituents ahead of she's right, is likely to be a challenging wildfire and drought season. Her question, I think, is an important one. I appreciate that she has brought up the Miocene Volunteer Fire Department's access to water on Dewar Lake. She's brought up the Wildwood Volunteer Fire Department's access to Minton Lake. Volunteer fire departments and fire departments in general actually fall under public safety and solicitor general. I'm not aware of the details of how they access water for fighting of structural fires. What I can say, however, is that even during a drought situation, there are no water restrictions for the BC Wildfire Service to access water from lakes and so forth. However, in the last year, we did hear from some communities who were worried about BC Wildfire Service drawing water from certain water systems, and the BC Wildfire Service worked with those communities to ensure that the ecological sensitivities of various water systems
Phone one disconnected.
into account. I don't know why somebody said that phone one was disconnected. Hopefully you can still hear me there. So that's about the extent that I can offer in terms of water access. I do recommend that the member canvass for question with public safety and Solicitor General in regards to how these volunteer fire departments access water.
Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and through you to the Minister. I appreciate that. What I'm trying to flag as we prepare for this wildfire season is that there is a disconnect, and I'm trying to articulate what happens on the ground in communities. And so I'm just trying to get ahead of an issue that, and to provide some solutions based on the type of work that is happening through the EMBC teams and through the access management teams that are operating under Flynn Road. So I'm just flagging that for the Minister as an opportunity. And the secondary opportunity that I think is critical is my colleague from Carrick-Chicoten's riding is 42,000 square kilometers, give or take. Mine is 38,000 square kilometers, so 2 Vancouver Islands. So they're a pretty significantly large region that we represent here in the Caribou, represent here in the legislature on behalf of our constituents. And one of the critical challenges as, again, we prepare for this wildfire season is road access. And the way it works in our regions is Forest Service roads play a critical element in us, being able to access water sources. For example, Minton Lake, you need to have access to that lake if we are going to, whether it's the BC Wildfire Service, whether it's a volunteer fire department, we need to get access into these areas to access the water sources we will need if there is an emergency. But the secondary piece, and I heard this through the BC Wildfire Service, we met with our teams as well, that road access into these remote rural areas is critically important. Currently, there is a significant push to deactivate roads throughout the entire Caribou. So as you deactivate roads, you pull bridges, you pull culverts, and you do not no longer have access points to fight fires in these areas if you have a lightning strike or a lightning storm. So that is a critical issue. So I raised it over the last 2 weeks with different stakeholder groups and ministry staff that I met with, and I asked that connection piece of a volunteer fire department, a water source, and the BC Wildfire Service access into areas where potentially we could have wildfires. And I asked that question, how do you get access into that as I see roads starting to become deactivated? And the ministry shared with me that the budget for the Forest Service roads for both the Caribous, so we're talking, 80,000 square kilometers, is $25,000 for our entire region. So $25,000 to manage the side roads that we need in order to get access to any of the, if there is a lightning strike that happens out in Nasco, if there's a lightning strike that happens out in the Chilcotin, if there's a lightning strike that happens out in Horsefly or likely in those areas, the chances are we're using a Forest Service road to get access into that point, whether it's the BC Wildfire Service or other respond teams to support that. So you have $25,000, which quite frankly probably pays for one culvert, maybe, in the entire Caribou. That's what our budget is. So I asked, why are we deactivating these roads and why can't the volunteer fire departments actually get access into these areas for water? And what has been identified is this budget challenge of $25,000. I actually thought it was an accidental, they dropped a couple of zeros off of the budget. I would have thought 25 million when you start looking at culverts and bridges and roads, and you see what the Auditor General came forward on the Forest Service Road report a couple of years ago. So through you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister, what work can EMBC do to work with other ministries to ensure that we actually have access into our remote rural areas, understanding the vital importance of these Forest Service roads?
Minister?
Thank you so much, Chair. I heard from the member for Caribou North, her the feedback that she is providing to us today. In my response to the first question around volunteer fire departments, she had noted it's less about asking the question of me, given that there are many other ministries involved in her question, and more flagging the issue so that we can be aware of it as a ministry and be able to prepare for this situation during an actual emergency. So I do thank the member for raising this with me and for flagging it for us. She does know that Forest Service roads are managed through the Ministry of Forests, and water access is managed through Walrus. But what she's trying to communicate, I believe, and perhaps the member can correct me if I'm wrong, but what she's trying to communicate is that communities are concerned about what happens in terms of what happens during an emergency situation where you have a wildfire and crews are unable to access by road water sources. I can share with the member that during the wildfire season, during the natural emergency, EMCR can work with communities, with local governments, with regional districts to problem solve the specific problems that they're trying to deal with. So for instance, if there is no road access to a water source, but water is required to put out a fire, then we would likely work with BC Wildfire Service to secure aviation equipment in order to access that water. We could bucket it directly out of the water source. So there are options. However, that being said, I do hear the members in terms of what she's trying to communicate as an ongoing concern and a larger concern. We're happy to flag this with our colleagues and see what kind of work we can do with them to prepare for possible scenarios during the emergency season this coming summer.